Chelsea haven't won the EFL Cup since 2015, and with the Blues falling short in 2 finals since then, perhaps this shall be third time lucky, with this being our year. The Blues start their campaign tonight as Stamford Bridge hosts League 2 Barrow AFC. But who will start, and how can we best our opponents in this match? Lads, lasses and the rest of the masses, welcome back to the lead-in. Let's go. So let's firstly set the scene and then we'll get into some predicted lineups. It's Chelsea versus Barrow, a fixture that has only happened once in the past competitively, an FA Cup tie back in the 40s that the Blues won handsomely. For us, this is just another game, but for Barrow this represents a big opportunity for them to not only play at a Premier League stadium and gain the funds that come with that, but try and compete against one of the top teams, after recently already pulling off a shock victory versus Derby County to get them into this round. Let's briefly touch on our opponents first, then we'll talk about Chelsea's lineup. Barrow are rather shockingly first in League 2 after the opening 7 games. They got promoted to the division in the 2020-21 season, and after a couple of years of finishing near the bottom, they have been an upper mid-table team for the last few. They've had an excellent start to this campaign, winning 5 games, losing once, and drawing once. That latter fixture being against Swindon Town, who scored a 90+8 minute equaliser, I'm sure Arsenal fans can share that frustration, whilst also having an outfield player in goal for half the game, so they were rather unlucky. Let's take a look at their transfer business this summer. These lower league sides swap players around a lot, so it's hard to judge how impactful their outgoings are. Instead, let's take a look at the acquisitions, because I think they have been one of the defining factors of this surging Barrow team. They've brought in a lot of players, but the main ones I want to direct attention to are Theo Vassell, Ben Jackson, and ex-Everton Academy forward Katia Kuyate. These 3 are all danger men in my opinion, and we'll have to see who will line up alongside them. That being said, let's take a look at the possible lineup for this Barrow team and see what we will be up against. Firstly, let's talk absentees. The Bluebirds seemingly don't have any players out, at least from what I can gather online, so they'll likely be full strength for this fixture. I'll be putting Stephen Clements' side into the 4-2-3-1 formation that they used to defeat Newport County in their previous fixture. First up in goal is going to be Will Stanway. He was rotated out of the side for that previous 2-0 victory, but I'd imagine he'd come back into his number 1 spot for this one. The defence is going to be slightly changed. First, in at right back, I'm going to be rotating out Rory Feely, as I expect Neo Eccleston to come back into the lineup after a brief stint on the bench. The centre-back partnership is a strong one, as the previously mentioned Theo Vassell, who is currently their top goal scorer from centre-back, and Niall Canavan play in the right and left centre-back spots respectively. Finally, at left back we have another man I've mentioned already, Ben Jackson. The fullback has the most assists in the team and is one of their set piece takers, so we'll have to keep an eye on him. Moving into the midfield, we'll start with the holding roles. This is staying unchanged from the last match, as Scotsman Dean Campbell partners Sam Foley in the engine room. Ahead of them, in the more advanced midfield roles, let's start on the right. The aforementioned Katia Kuyate will be on that side. In the centre, we should once again see Kian Spence, and finishing off the line will be goalscorer last time out Elliot Newby. Finally, up top in the striker role will be Jed Garner, who has 2 goals so far this season, and will be hoping to add a very memorable one to his collection here. That's just a brief look at what their team could look like. I'd imagine they'd go all out against us and try to pull off another shock result, so I don't expect many rotations. Now let's turn our attention to Chelsea and see what our lineup for this game could be. Again, there's not too many absentees for this one. Reece James is still injured and Romeo Lavia still isn't fit enough for an appearance here, but Malo Gusto is, so perhaps he gets to see the field tonight. Apart from that, everyone is available for this one, so I'll be putting Enzo Maresca's Chelsea team in the 4-3-3 formation once again, with wholesale changes from our 3-0 battering of West Ham as we go into this busy period. Starting with the goalkeeper, I'm going to be putting in Philip Jurgensen. Robert Sanchez had another great game last time out, but I'd expect the number 2 to swap in for this cup game. For the back 4, it's going to be an entirely new backline, so starting with the right back, I'm going to be putting in youth product Josh Achempong. I personally wouldn't risk Gusto from the start, and this is a great opportunity to give a deserving youngster some valuable minutes. To his left, the centre-back pairing is one that we have seen countless times before. Ex-Monaco duo Axel Disasi and Benoit Badiashile play in the right and left centre-back spots, respectively. Finally, over on the left is going to be Renato Vega, though there is the chance that he plays in midfield and we see Ben Chilwell. I doubt that will happen. Moving into that midfield, this is going to look strange at first, but will look more natural once we move around in-game. In the quote-unquote holding role, I've opted to put Cesare Casadei. Lavia is still out and Caicedo needs a rest, and we don't really have anyone else who can play here. Ahead of him in the advanced roles, I've gone for the duo of Joao Felix on the right and Kiernan Dewsbury Hall on the left. Ahead of them in the attacking roles, let's start on the right. Pretty obvious one here, I'd expect Pedro Neto to get a start in his more favoured position. Opposite him on the left wing, I'd be very surprised if we don't see Misha Mudryk, though Nkunku could also play here. Finally, up top will be Christopher Nkunku, though Mark Guiu is definitely an option too. Now, as I've been doing in these videos, let's touch on a few substitutes I'd like to see Enzo Maresca make in this game. We get to make 5 substitutes in this match, and I'd hope to see involvement for some youth and fringe players here. So the 5 men I'd like to see subbed on are Tyreek George, Carney Chukwuemeka, Mark Guiu, Malo Gusto, and finally a shock return to the side for Ben Chilwell. Apart from that, I think this is a solid team and perfectly capable of beating Barrow, and we'll talk about how in a little bit. But before we do, it's time for today's comment question of the day, so answer me this. What are your early impressions of Enzo Maresca at Chelsea, and why? Let me know in the comments down below with QOTD at the start as always, and I'll heart my favourite answers. Now let's take a look at how Chelsea can navigate this game tactically and see how we can beat the Bluebirds in this game. But before that, I just wanted to ask you guys to follow me on my other socials, the main one being my Twitter, or X. Over 18,000 of you subscribe to me on this channel, but only 400 of you follow me over there. If everyone that's watching this video could follow me over there, we could easily hit over 1,000 on that account, I believe. I live tweet every single Chelsea game, and I'm also allowed to be a bit more unfiltered over there, so you're missing out. Also, if you like shorter content, I do have a TikTok too. I've been recently posting some teasers on my YouTube shorts, but the full videos will be on my TikTok, and that's where I'll be kind of doing more fun, less analytical, and a bit more jokey things and or rants. So for that type of content, you can go see me over there. I appreciate you guys as always, and hope to see you guys over on those other platforms too. Now let's get back to the video. Okay, so here we have the team, and as always, let's move them into the formation that they'll probably play in game. Obviously, this looks a bit strange, having Cesare Casadei playing as this holding role, but I don't think this is how we'll actually set up in the match. What I would expect is that Renato Vega obviously will invert. We know that he's the type of player to do that, but he's going to actually invert not just into this kind of left-sided 6, but actually into this holding role. And kind of what I expect to see is, obviously they will play as a 2 at some points during this game, with Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall and Felix pushing up a little bit more. But I think for the most part we're going to kind of see that variant that we've seen before in the past, and obviously we've seen multiple variants of this 3 at the back system that under Enzo already this season, but the one that we've kind of seen before is with that 1 holding player, 2 8s as it were, and then 1 player playing in this advanced 10 role. Now this is the way that I think that would set up in this diamond rather than in the box. And we get to see Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall obviously very capable as playing as an 8 on this left side. Casadei as well, very capable of playing as an 8, even though he likes to get more advanced, I would suggest. So he can play on this side. Vega obviously very, very capable as playing as one of the defensive midfielders, and obviously he'll have to do this on his own today, but I don't think that will phase him too much, to be honest. I think he's more than capable of being able to do that job. Obviously, Felix is perfectly capable of playing in this 10, and in fact, I think this is probably his best position, just behind the striker. Obviously, Nkunku will be ahead of him in this scenario. I have suggested that maybe Mark Guiu could play, but I think he's probably not going to. I think Nkunku is kind of being eased into this 9 role, and we've kind of heard Enzo Maresca talk about Nkunku playing as a 9 rather than in his preferred position, which is a little bit further back. But obviously, what these 2 can do is not only can they play one behind the other, they can obviously switch because they can both play as a forward and both players are 10, but they could also do this kind of setting up here in this like 3-3-4 kind of scenario, with them both playing really, really high if we need to. Obviously, if the ball's going out wide, we don't really need players in the centre here. We can have players kind of going out this way, so that's maybe an option too. For the most part, I think this is how we're going to play. Obviously, Mudryk, I would imagine, gets some minutes. Pedro Neto, I think, finally gets to play on the right wing, which is where I think he prefers to play. Obviously, he can play on the left, and obviously his burst of acceleration to get into the box and then put balls across is something that's very valuable, but I think the main strength of his is being able to cut onto his left foot and shoot and or assist from this kind of position here. Now, the other thing I want to kind of talk about in this system is Josh Chempong. Obviously, I've put him in here instead of someone like Tosin. He will play not as a right back, but as this kind of Wesley Fofana role, as it were. When Wesley plays out here on the wide position, he can kind of stay here as this right centre back. And obviously, Josh can do this. He's a big lad, despite his age, and I think he's perfectly capable of not only going forward but going back. And this will be a good test for him. I think that we need to ease him more into playing this role. Obviously, with the kind of concerns that we're getting now with Reece James constantly being injured, I think that one of our youth product right backs needs to start getting promoted into the team more and kind of play as a backup to Gusto. So I think Josh is perfectly capable of doing that, and I think that's kind of what he needs to prove that he's able to do in this game. Obviously, this is a more relaxed scenario against a team that isn't the greatest of quality, so hopefully he can do a very good performance here, and he can kind of impress Maresca. That's what I'd hope to see, but he's obviously going to play there, and he won't be getting up into the kind of inverted Gusto role, as it were. I'd imagine he'd play more reserved in this game. Now I'm going to talk about Barrow a little bit here, because their way of playing is actually quite admirable for a lower league side. They do like to keep possession when they do have the ball, and they do like to pass it around, and they do like to create opportunities for themselves. Against us, I don't think they'll do that very much. I think they will do, one of their other strengths is the fact that they can play very direct, and what they kind of like to do is they not only can play it obviously from the centre backs or the goalkeeper, just line it really long like a lot of lower league sides do, but they actually kind of prefer to kind of move the ball to the wide areas into one of their fullbacks, mainly Jackson on this left hand side, who's very, very capable of playing the ball, and they like playing it down the line direct to their wingers. Obviously, they set up in this 4-2-3-1, but the two wide players, Newbie especially, really likes to get on the ball and kind of play as pure wingers and get really high if they can. Newbie in particular is one that I think is a big danger man for us, and I think that he's, out of all the players in the side, he's the one that's got the most kind of technical ability on the ball in terms of dribbling and skill. Obviously, we've got Kiate on the other side, who I think is, again, he's an ex-Everton youth player, so he's definitely got some quality about him, or he wouldn't have made it to that level. He can definitely be a danger man too. And they, as I said, they like to play the ball along. If they can get it to their wingers, they'll like to drive at us. If they can get it up to Jed Garner in this central role, he can obviously knock it back, and they can kind of progress from there and try and play forward. But for the most part, I think that we are going to kind of see this pattern of play that we usually see against these types of teams, where we have a lot of possession. When they do get the ball, they try and play it long, they try and play it down into the channels. That's another thing they do. If they can kind of navigate it into the midfield and get it onto their deeper midfielders that are a bit more creative in terms of passing, they will try and play the ball into the left or right channels and these kind of half spaces where the striker can run into. And that, again, against someone like Disasi, who's not the quickest, or a Josh Chempong, who's not the most experienced, these types of runs could cause us issues. Hopefully we will be able to deal with that. And I do theorise, and I'll talk about this in a little bit more, that we kind of want to make them play this way. We don't really want to be giving them extended spells of possession, because they do back themselves to score goals. They're obviously top of their league, and they've shown in the past that they can score goals. Admittedly, a lot of them come from set pieces, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about mainly, is that the combination of their left back Ben Jackson and Theo Vassell in this right centre back position, they have the most goal contributions in the team, right? And most of this is coming from Ben Jackson obviously being their corner taker, and Theo Vassell just being so good in the box. And they like to play two kind of types of set pieces from what I've seen. The first one is the stereotypical Thiago Silva run, where Jackson will play it into the 6-yard box, and Theo will run to the front post and get that flick on into the goal. He loves doing that, but also because he is, again, a tall player, he can pop up at the back post too. He's been very good at this, and obviously he's their top goal scorer. Despite them having decent players up front, he's actually their top goal scorer so far this season. Jackson, obviously, from left back, being their top assister. So those two are the players that we definitely need to kind of look out for, and we can't be giving them easy set pieces. Like, if we're giving them free kicks in, for example, in these areas near a Chempong, if he's kind of being a bit inexperienced and getting making fouls in these areas, this kind of area from that left peg of Jackson will be very difficult for us to deal with. Especially, I think this corner, when he gets to play an in swinger rather than the out swinger, I think is very dangerous for us. We'll have to avoid that. I haven't seen them do long throws, so I don't think that will be something we need to concern ourselves with. I think we can kind of be fine to play it long, but you never know in these these knockout games. You know, they might decide to do something new, and obviously they know how successful Theo Vassell can be in the box. They'll always try to get it to him if he's there. The other thing I wanted to talk about is kind of the way they defend, because we've seen it in a couple of games, in the latter stages of games especially, but sometimes during the actual match, they like to do this thing where they go very narrow with their back four, and they'll bring both of their wingers into the back four. So they actually play in a 6-2-2 with the striker and the central player kind of acting as this 2 and kind of trying to be the ones that press if they need to. Their 2 holding midfielders sitting in front of the back 4, and then the the wingers coming really far back and playing almost like wing backs and just being really hard to get past. And obviously we know that Chelsea have in the past struggled against playing against low blocks, right? So this is something they will probably do from the start against us, I would imagine, and it's kind of up to us to be able to navigate that and be able to create chances, because we know that if we leave it very late and we don't get the goal and they take it to pens, they can win penalty shootouts. They can be stubborn enough to hold larger league sides to draws, so they might be able to do that against us. So hopefully we can kind of navigate that low block. But this is kind of the pattern I kind of see and expect from them, is them playing this 6-2-2 as it were. And if we do give away the ball, they're going to try and quickly break through direct passing and kind of try and do what we would expect from a lower league side and try and play on the counter. And obviously we've shown, and I've spoken about it in the past, our vulnerabilities from counter attacks. We even saw it in the West Ham game. Despite us playing very well in that game and us winning 3-0, we still had those opportunities given to the opposition for their wingers like Kudus, for example, running in on the wings. We've been very vulnerable at getting broken on down the wings because of the way that we invert our fullback and the fact that the space is not there and the players that we have out here aren't particularly used to defending in these wide scenarios. Admittedly, in this game we have a Chempong who would be better, I would imagine, at defending these wide scenarios because he is a natural right back, so hopefully we don't see that as much. I think the left hand side is basically where they will target, because Vega is the one that has to get back, and that the time that it takes for him to get back into his position is kind of when they can spring their counters. So hopefully we don't concede off of the back of that, but that is basically where I feel like they will get their most success, if they're able to get the ball back, get it up the pitch quickly and go down this, specifically down this right hand side. So how do we as a team actually beat this? Now, I think there's a lot of things we can do. Obviously, I'm going to put them back into the positions that they've kind of been playing, just to make this a little bit more clear. But when they are playing in this 4-2-3-1 and they don't have their wingers back, it's very obvious what we need to do. I speak about it a lot. It's what this system is all designed to do, and it's to make those 1v1s. We need to get Neto up against his fullback. We need to get Mudryk up against his fullback. Create these 1v1s out wide, but also make sure that Nkunku is occupying one of the centre backs or dragging him out of position if he drops deep to try and get the ball. Obviously, a lot of the time we'll always have this kind of four in midfield to try and navigate their midfield, but a lot of the time we do like to drop our striker into this kind of position. We see this a lot with Jackson. He always drops and then tries to run into the left channel, so we could probably see that from Nkunku too. And if he drops into this position next to Felix, obviously not only can Felix then run on beyond him, but this centre back that's following him will have to be dragged out of position. And once we get that space, then we can obviously make runs in there and try and play the ball into those areas and then get goals from there. I think a lot of the kind of things that we need to do in this game are more so just us playing our game and not letting the occasion get the better of us, not getting the inexperience of the team kind of get to us, and also just playing like a big team. We need to make sure that we put our authority, stamp down our authority on this game, and just kind of say, hey, look, we know that you're playing well, we know that you're top of your league, but we are obviously 3 leagues above you, and we're there for a reason, right? We need to be able to show our quality with our passing. If they do press us, which I'm not sure if they will, I'm not sure if they're that much of a pressing team, we'll be able to have to try and play it around them. Obviously, in this way that they kind of play, they're going to have this, we're going to have this 4v3 advantage in the midfield here with their midfielders. Obviously, if their striker comes back, then that's a little bit more better for them, but we can always find the spare man because we're always going to have one, whether that be Cassidy getting pressed and then Felix becoming open, or for example Felix getting pressed and then Cassidy becoming open. There's always going to be these scenarios, and obviously we saw this in the West Ham game. It's that little intricate pass before the ball forward that we're kind of looking for here, where one player gets occupied. For example, say Felix gets occupied, if the ball goes across, we saw Enzo play this to Caicedo, and then obviously Caicedo played it forward. That's the type of thing we're looking for, and that's the type of opportunities we're looking for. I think if we create those constantly, they're going to find it very difficult to deal with that. And mainly the thing which I want to touch on is just we need to be swift with our passing. We obviously know that Enzo Maresca loves our 1-touch, 2-touch passing. He always says it, 3 touches is too much, and what we kind of need to be seeing is us playing the ball so quickly that they cannot adjust to it, and obviously they will not have seen these types of things. And I think that's basically what we need to really do in this game, is just show Barrow things that they have not seen in terms of playing games, right? A lot of these players are obviously good players in their own right, but they have not seen the quality that we have in terms of trickery, in terms of passing, in terms of speed of play, control, that type of thing. Obviously a lot of loose balls in lower league football. If we can keep the ball tight to our players with good control and keep playing it quickly, they will just get rings run around them. And I think that's basically what we have to do. We just have to keep the ball moving, keep it moving fast, and not give them the opportunity to get on the ball and actually get opportunities, because if they do get opportunities, I do think they are a good enough team to score against us. I will say that. Our defence hasn't been the greatest in terms of the entire season. Obviously we're coming into a bit of defensive form now with the last 2 clean sheets away from home, but we have struggled in those scenarios before, and obviously this is a much weakened backline to our first 11, so they can definitely score if we don't put the pressure on them and don't force them to go back. And I think that's another thing, is just keeping control of the ball and not letting them kind of create those opportunities. But also, if we score early, I think this makes the game very, very difficult for them. Obviously we've scored early against West Ham, and then we also scored early in the second half too, which kind of put the nail in the coffin, as it were, for them. We need to do the same thing here, where if we score early, they can't sit back and defend, they have to try and get a goal, or they just go out. So that's kind of the thing which we did to West Ham. We'll have to do that here again. If we get an early goal, I really think that this will be quite ugly for them, and I think they probably will concede quite a lot. We see this very often for Chelsea, whether it be Grimsby back in the day or those types of teams. We always have a one of those games where we kind of beat teams by a lot of goals in these third round ties, so hopefully we can do that again. And it's not just about being quality on the ball, it's also being quality off the ball. I think that if we are letting them have the ball, or if they're getting the ball, we need to be putting on that high press. We need to be really, really pressing them, because again, that's something they will not have seen as much in their lower league, is that intense press and the ability to kind of force them to go where we want to go. And especially the goalkeeper, we've seen obviously one of their goalkeepers getting a red card in the league earlier from a miscontrolled pass after some pressure. If we're putting pressure onto the goalkeeper and the centre backs to force them to go long, not only does it just force them to go long and to help us recycle possession, because we all probably win these aerial duels. Badiashile and Disasi are very, very tall, unless the ball goes out to this side with Jempong. I think he's the weakest. Obviously Vega very, very tall in the midfield as well. If we're forcing them to go long, obviously they don't get the ball. We get the ball, we get more opportunities to score. And in general, I think we will just force mistakes from this back line, which is what we want to be doing. Obviously, I theorise we'll get at least 2 chances in this game from one of our players pressing really hard, them passing the ball a bit short to someone, and then, for example, Keenan Dewsbury Hall snapping in ahead of a player, getting the ball, playing it forward, that type of thing. I think we'll be able to create chances from that if they do get periods on the ball, which we don't know yet. Maybe they'll get extended possession, we don't know. I expect we won't, because I think we'll probably dominate possession in this game like we have done for the majority of our games. And the last thing which I want to kind of touch on is the way we need to play this game slightly differently to the way we played West Ham. Obviously we could play against West Ham very transitionally, because they didn't sit back, they played with a very high line, and also the striker that we had was Jackson, and he's very good on the transition. In this game, and I think this really suits us playing Nkunku here rather than Jackson, because I don't think Jackson would have very good time against this opposition because of how deep they will probably sit. And obviously he's much better when he gets to run in behind and take players on. I don't think he's going to be able to do that much in this game. Against a team that sits lower, I think Nkunku is a perfect player, because what we need to be doing in this game, and basically what I think is the most important thing we need to do if we're trying to create chances and get goals, is to play the ball and feed it into Nkunku when he's in this area. We know this, and I've both spoken it in the past. Nkunku is our best player inside the box by far. There's no other player in this team that is as good as Nkunku when he gets into this position with the ball. He's going to score if he gets here in space, and if he is able to get here without space, he usually will create that space for himself. So if we can feed the ball into Nkunku, not just from obviously playing it across and him trying to get goals, obviously he's very good at in the air for a player that's not very tall, we've seen that, but also he's so good positionally in terms of knowing where to be in the box and get goals from cutbacks and things like that. So he can obviously do that, but I think genuinely just feeding the ball to him 2 feet from these outside areas and allowing him to be able to turn and get shots off, I think is going to be a way that we can get through and a way we can get goals. I theorise there'll be quite a lot of goals in this game, and it really just depends on how well they can kind of deal with the wide attack and stop us from creating these 1v1s, because I think that's the main thing. Like, when we make those 1v1s, we are one of the most deadly teams in terms of attacking because of how good our quality is over on these wings. Obviously, Mudryk, I think, has a really big point to prove in this game. He has the license now in this kind of rotated role to just be himself and kind of express himself and try and be deadly, and he doesn't have that same pressure of like, hey, you need to perform because you're playing on a Premier League stage. So hopefully he can have a good game. I really want him to progress. We know he's got all the tools, he just hasn't really clicked yet, so hopefully we get to see him getting a goal here. But yeah, hopefully we get a good game as well. And I do want to say the fans of Barrow and the social media team and stuff have been very, very courteous in the build up to this game. So I wish you guys luck if there are any fans of Barrow watching. I hope we have a good game. And yeah, as I said, good luck, and we'll obviously see how things turn out. For a score prediction, despite all my praise, I'm going to be predicting a routine early round battering here for Chelsea. So unfortunately for Barrow, I'm going for a 4-0 result, with Christopher Nkunku blowing up another balloon, and Pedro Neto, Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall and subbed on Mark Guiu all getting their first goals for the club. We'll have to wait until the game to see if any of my predictions are correct, and as always, I'll be live streaming immediately after the game with Feeling Blue to review the match, so make sure you come through if you are able. But if you can't wait until then, YouTube reckons you'll enjoy one of these 2 videos on screen in the meantime. Thank you guys so much for watching as ever, and remember, in the rain or in the dry, keep that blue flag flying high. Come on, you Blues.